Greetings, magnificent souls, to the Attract Health, Build Wealth podcast, where we have open and honest discussions about ourselves. This is a place where we break down, break away, and break through codependency, allowing ourselves to attract health, build wealth, and live a peaceful life. My name is Lily, and today in episode 3, we'll be going through one of many distinguishing characteristics of codependency. As always, please share your thoughts about the podcast, this particular characteristic, or anything you want to share in our safe and open for everyone forum at epiphanyvault.com. So let's get started. As I mentioned, this is one significant trait of codependency. As we're going to go along, we're going to see that there are many different iterations of codependency, and this stems a lot from my relationship with myself. And as I continue to grow and to overcome codependency, these are things that really have been pointed out and are significant for me. One significant trait of codependency in a relationship is the codependent having difficulty making decisions. Today, we're going to spend a lot of time on this, and in a relationship setting, and we're going to talk about it specifically in a relationship setting, but this certainly can be true in any other life situation where you have to have relationships with people. So it could be sexual, professional, or financial, for example. So difficulty making decisions in a relationship. And this is how it looked for me. We would get in fights about minuscule things like finding a place to go out to eat. For some reason, that was the hardest thing for us to do, right? Where do you want to eat? I don't know. Where do you want to eat? Oh, do you want Chinese? No, I don't feel like Chinese. So there was a definite disconnect between how we communicated as a couple, I think, because one, I wasn't able to really tap into my desires. And again, something as trivial as choosing a place to go out to eat. If you're like me, a lot of that turned into a larger, episodic argument behavior issue. Another thing that really was significant for me with this particular characteristic is being bullied and backing down from compromise that we should have as a couple really tried to work together on, if that makes sense. So a lot of times I felt that I was the one really putting all the energy out there about us together as a couple. If he was on one end and I was on the other, I felt I was the one really trying to come together to compromise about something. And many times, side note on that, many times I would offer up something really, really extreme. And in hindsight, like for example, I asked him, well, maybe we should have a kid and I can be a stay-at-home mom, because at the time he still isn't, but he wasn't approving of my professional situation. So my compromise to him was, maybe let's just have a kid and I can be a stay-at-home mom. In hindsight, thank God that didn't happen, but that was the extreme that I was willing to go to compromise, where he wanted me to be, or, make him feel better, or, whatever type of alternate, feelings that I had about that. But I also felt like I was being bullied into having a stance and having, and being the only one that was willing to compromise, because I really felt like that he was on the other end of the spectrum. So for me, I was backing down on that. And I think that the very core with a codependent is we tend to, be a martyr sometimes for the relationship, or for, for whatever kind of goal or end that we have in mind. When in reality, a healthy relationship is able to tap into, the togetherness of that decision and that of the couple. Does that make sense? So that was a really big one. Just want to sit on that for a little bit, because I really felt like that I was being harmed in that type of situation. And also, to make note, now I'm learning skills now to have boundaries associated with that. So, in hindsight, maybe I should have said, look, I really feel like that I'm trying to come together on this. And if we can't make a decision, maybe we need to reevaluate our relationship. when I really internalized a lot of that anger and a lot of that frustration, and that only really made it worse for me. So, along with difficulty making decisions in a relationship, something that manifested in me with this particular characteristic too was fear of making the wrong decision or being wrong. So, with the person that I was with, there was a lot of there was a lot of back and forth about, oh, you're wrong and you're just being too sensitive. You just need to chill out. That type of kind of blaming rhetoric was pointed towards me. And that, again, I really internalized that. So a lot of my self-esteem, if I really did try to set a boundary or try to compromise, I was shot down. And so after, a few times of that happening, my self-esteem and my self-worth was just kind of being whittled down, and whittled down. I guess, got numb to the importance of having your own thoughts and your own opinions as related to a decision, even something as inconsequential as going to get food and going out to eat. So that constant beratement and bombardment of my worth really kind of internalized with me. And, the fight for me wasn't, it just wasn't worth it for me anymore. So in a way, I was afraid of making the wrong decision or being wrong because I knew the consequences of that in that relationship that I was in, which is literally just going to make me feel like shit. Also, with the lack of decision making or being able to make a decision, is I didn't want to appear to be mean or a bitch. And I think, for a lot of the women I know, especially those that are very in touch and in tune with their spirituality and their feelings, I think this is a huge one, especially for a lot of codependents as well, is it's hard to say no. And it's hard to put your foot down because a lot of times the person that you're with will really tune into that and again, start the downward spiral and the chop down of the tree of your worth and your self-esteem. And I really felt that. I really felt that. And I was always been raised to be nice to people, and sometimes I really didn't distinguish. I'm working on this now, but I really didn't distinguish between being nice to someone else and if in turn that niceness would harm me. So being able to establish that boundary of, is being nice to this person going to harm me in any way, if that makes sense. And a lot of that goes, again, like professionally, I see that a lot. Being able to say no is a huge boundary, and to say it correctly and have the skills and the tools to do that is a huge way to learn to say yes to you and no to someone else. Just because you don't have to say yes to everyone. I know it sounds duh, Lily. I know that you're not, you don't have to say yes to everybody, but a lot of codependents do feel the need to do that. And maybe not in every situation, but in close relationship situations or, again, professional situations, not wanting to look mean or to look like a bitch is a huge, issue. So tapping into that is really a good thing. And this can go along the lines of the sexual harassment, the metoo movement going on right now. I personally, after years and years of experiencing sexual misconduct, I was finally able to put my foot down about 3 months ago. And in my head, I can definitely say, and I'm not afraid to say it because I feel like saying this and talking about it is really what we need right now. But there was an insecurity in me that I was going to, look mean or look like a bitch, or that I was going to be judged on the severity of the incident, which I think that I will be, and I think that I have been, actually, even talking to other women, like, how bad was it? And to me, it was bad. So we'll get into that in a different episode, but not appearing to be mean or a bitch, I feel like, is a huge it's a huge kind of insecurity that codependent women, even men, have, because they don't want to buck waters. They don't like confrontation, um, or they just get beaten down so much. Like, stop being a bitch. I've heard that many times. So just think about that as you're making decisions, right? Something else that manifested in me when it comes to decision making in my codependency is procrastinating, right? Um, and I think it's okay. Let me just say this before we get into this, is I do think it's okay for you to, like, if you have to make a decision, or if you have to have a conversation, or, again, romantically, professionally, I think it's okay, depending on your character or who you are, to have to think on things. But procrastinating could be procrastinating like in physically doing an action, or procrastinating about thinking about it, right? Is forgetting or purposely blocking off, building walls about what's hurting you, or what's not hurting you, or what the issue with your partner is, or your um I don't know, like your coworker is, for example, right? So I feel like a big extension of the difficulty in making decisions in a codependent relationship is procrastinating. And that's just, in some cases, and I've been there, is avoidance, straight up avoidance of the situation, the steps that you needed to take to protect yourself, and doing the right thing, right? So as we get into this, you'll learn a little bit more about my story. But what I realized is that the moral of my whole life really is, and the way that I've been interacting with people romantically in other ways, is I've been doing things for them, and I haven't been doing things for me. And something as little as making a decision about going out to eat and tapping into what my desires and what I want to do is really just procrastinating about finding my self-worth, right? Finding my love enough to not make a stand in something. Got to pick your battles, but procrastinating that, like, feeling of worth, right? And putting that off, even though something doesn't feel good, right? That situation, if you have a fight about where you're supposed to go out to eat with your partner, it doesn't feel good. It feels weird and unhealthy and dysfunctional. Maybe you procrastinate, you put that off just because. And the next one on my list is disliking confrontation. I am a huge huge offender of disliking confrontation, and I will say that right now. I'm learning by setting boundaries and learning how to set boundaries with others. But I've gone so far as to move across the country. I've gone so far as I've lost friends because of my codependency, which is very disheartening. But it's good that I'm realizing now what was wrong with the way that I was interacting with people. And lack of decision making is also, for me, it was running away from confrontation, kind of like procrastinating in your mind, but really just getting out of that situation, whether that was a healthy healthy way to do that or not. Because what I've realized in the years past is that now those instances that I ran away from, they're still with me because I feel a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. I'm able now to better articulate what was going on in my head. Now I'm better able to connect with why I was that way. And in some cases, for example, with me, some of my friends, for example, like, I don't feel like that I was 100% at fault. I do feel like that it was um, kind of a two-way street, but I do feel like that I dealt with it wrong or incorrectly, if that makes sense. And that's just the whole thing of boundary setting, and basically just not liking confrontation. So learning the skills to set boundaries and to be true to yourself is a huge, huge skill and tool that we'll work on together. Another point about making decisions or codependents having problems doing that is my significant other, setting unrealistic boundaries and me not setting any, or setting them and not standing by them. So let me just read that again. My significant other setting unrealistic boundaries and me not setting any, or setting them and not standing by them. So from a decision-making perspective, I, again, made decisions based on the boundaries or the expectations that my significant other had on me. And that had a lot to do with my physical appearance, my professional goals, and I wasn't able to articulate and tell him what I wanted to do and what I like to do, what I feel good doing, until 7 years into the relationship and towards the end of our relationship, which is naturally why we broke up, is because I was realizing things about myself and coming into my own and realizing that this person, these unrealistic boundaries that he was setting for me and this person that he wanted me to be wasn't me. I could be it. I could be super skinny. I could be, get $100,000 per year job. I would be unhappy. I would be miserable. I would probably, a lot of that misery would probably manifest in things like eating terribly, not exercising, drinking too much. I knew towards the end of our relationship that those boundaries that he were set, we just weren't on the same page, on the same level. And because I wasn't able to, I realized that these things that he was wanting me to be, wanting me to do, I finally realized the power of making decisions for myself, right? Setting boundaries. When in the past years in our relationship, I had flimsily, set boundaries with him, and I wasn't able to stand by them. And that's, in a way, it kind of ties into a lack of decision making because, and for me, decision making is pretty binary, right? It's either you're going to do it and you do it, or you don't and you don't, right? And for a lot of the years, I was in this kind of gray area of maybe knowing internally and in my gut that something felt off and that I felt dysfunctional and unhappy. But the breaking point for me kind of led me to a place where I needed to get healthy, and I needed to do it then, and I need to do it now. So that was the decision for me to get healthy and to get in a better mental state and, to realize my self-love and my self-worth, which is what we talk about here. A couple more little pieces on decision making, and I do want to know, just want to take a break on that, and I do want to know how you feel about this stuff. If what I'm saying, if it sends an aha moment or a light bulb in you. We have I have a forum, like I said before, called Epiphany Vault, epiphanyvault.com. You can go there and you can express your feelings about the podcast. If, feedback, if you want to, tell me an epiphany that you had or some struggles that you're having, we can address them on the show. It's completely up to you. You have the ability to do that. You have the ability to enter your email if you want to know things about my life, what's going on with me, and other kind of programs that we're going to be doing. But I just wanted to take a break to let you know about that. I do have 3 other bullet points that I want to go through about decision making and codependency. But I really appreciate you listening to the podcast. So back to the decision making skills. We touched a little bit on this earlier, but having no middle ground and no compromise from your significant other, which again, we kind of touched on that before, but again, with him, I really felt like it was all him or all nothing. And for me, I felt like I was able to compromise and come to the middle on what he wanted. but with him, there was no middle ground. Like I said, there's just no compromise available. It was either all him or all nothing. And I realized that. And again, that was kind of where we began to split off. Something in the dating world that I thought that I remembered as I was making this list about decision making is dating the first person that comes along and that makes me laugh. And the realization for me about that, especially now as I'm getting back into dating, is there's so much more. There's so much more to that. And I even remember back in high school when people were asking people to prom, I had all these Twitters, not Twitters like today, but all these little birdies telling me that, oh, this person's going to ask you and this person's going to ask you. And I remember vividly and specifically saying, I don't care. Just whoever asked me first, that's who I'm going to go with. And so that's what I ended up doing. And funny enough, what's freaking, however many years later, that's how I've been living, or my dating life is the first man that treats me well, buys me dinner, and makes me laugh is the man of my dreams. I don't think so. So I've now made a conscious decision on mapping out, my ideal partner and my ideal mate, as it comes to later in life. And, we'll see how that goes. And I do deeply feel that there is someone out there like that. But the difference is now that I've made a decision to not sacrifice who I am for other people. And I think that's the big one. The last one that we're going to cover is about making decisions is my significant other projecting ideals and goals on me. And again, this comes to, for me, it manifested in my physical appearance, like how I do my hair or my makeup. We used to, go out and go to the store and I didn't have any makeup on, which is fine by me. I would rather live my life with no makeup, obviously. And I feel gorgeous the way I am anyways, but he would make me go put on makeup or not liking my outfit or the shoes that I was wearing, right? So that's, again, these are boundary setting issues, right? And decisions that I wasn't able to make for myself. I wasn't able to stand up for myself and be like, F you, I'm going to wear what I want, which sometimes I did about my shoes, very particular. But ideals and goals. The goal thing for us was a big thing as we got towards the end of our relationship because my professional, I've had a lot of success professionally and I'm proud about that. But what I was realizing is my drive to serve, my drive to be an entrepreneur was strong in me, so much so that I was able to finally make a decision about that in my life and the trajectory of my professional career and verbalize that, and my significant other, funny enough, wasn't the only person I had to verbalize that. It was also other men in my life as well. And that decision for me to make that decision to put my foot down and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is important for me, or to me, excuse me. I may make mistakes and I may falter along the way, but I'd like you to be there for that. And he wasn't willing to do that. There was a lot of pressure on me to go back into the corporate world and find a corporate position and a quote-unquote good-paying position so that we could be happy. And I wasn't able, I finally was able to get to the point where to say, no, that will not make me happy. So making decisions about yourself and about who you want to be should be really only up to you. It shouldn't be to somebody else, right? And feel strong in that. We're all worth it, right? So that's the end of what I wanted to cover today. Pretty simple. And just one more mention about the epiphanyvault.com. Please go there for any feedback. It is, again, an open way for you to connect to the universe. And you have the ability to tell us if you want to cover this on any podcasts or future episodes, any questions about my life or things that are going on with you. It's really my goal to connect spiritually with you, as many people as possible, because, look, this is a huge thing for me. This brought me from the brink of suicide to be where I am today and teaching people and